It began with a body frozen in the snow and led to a truth buried deeper than the cold itself. Welcome to Wind River, a place where every secret leaves a footprint. The story begins with a girl running through the thick darkness of the night, across a barren, snow-covered land, trying to escape from someone. She's injured and terrified, running barefoot on the freezing snow. The cold makes her stumble and fall, but she doesn't stop. She gets up and starts running again with all her strength. The scene shifts to the next day, where we see a sniper hunting a wild coyote. This sniper's name is Cory Lambert. Cory is a wildlife tracker who works for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. He's known as the best hunter in the entire region. Afterward, Cory goes to his ex-wife Wilma's house. Their marriage ended for some reason, but they still share love and respect for each other. Wilma is about to leave town for a few days for a new job interview, so she asks Cory to take their son Casey to his grandparents' place. Before going to his grandparents' house, Casey spends some fun time with his father, Cory. As Cory had promised, he teaches Casey how to ride a horse. After that, Cory takes Casey to his grandparents' place. Seeing him, Casey's grandpa is overjoyed and hugs him tightly. He then asks Cory how he's been. Casey's grandfather tells Cory that the area has become more dangerous than before. He explains that last night, some animal brutally killed one of their steers. Curious, Cory wants to take a look at it. So, Casey's grandfather takes him to see the dead steer. As soon as Cory sees the carcass, he notices a few tracks around it. After studying them carefully, he says it was a mountain lion, a female, who came here with her 2 cubs and hunted the steer. Following the tracks, Cory sets out to find the lioness. While tracking the lioness, Cory rides deep into the snow-covered wilderness. Suddenly, he spots bloodstains on the snow. He parks his snowmobile, puts on his snow gear, and begins following the trail of blood. As he moves forward, the pattern of the blood and footprints starts to confuse him. Eventually, Cory follows the trail to a dead body. It's the same girl we saw running in the opening scene. There are injuries on her head, and her entire body is frozen stiff. Seeing her like this deeply saddens Cory. He immediately reports the incident to the local police. A little while later, a snowstorm begins. Cory tells the sheriff, Ben, "We're losing the tracks. You need to let me follow them now." But Ben replies that it's an FBI case, so he can't authorize Cory to do anything. Cory then asks if Ben has informed the girl's family. Ben says he can't do anything until the FBI arrives. Cory looks at him and says, "That girl is Natalie, Ben. You know her. And even then, you're just waiting for the FBI?" Just then, an FBI officer arrives. Her name is Jane Banner. Ben introduces himself, saying his name is Ben Shoyo and that he's the chief of the tribal police. He then introduces Cory to Jane, explaining that Cory was the one who found the girl's body. Jane says she wants to see the victim. After that, Cory, Ben, and Jane head to the location of the body. Enjoying the movie so far? Don't forget to subscribe for more. We bring you detailed movie explanations you won't want to miss. Once there, Jane learns that the deceased girl's name is Natalie Hansen, an 18-year-old who lived about 30 minutes north of this area. After a brief examination, Jane concludes that Natalie might have been sexually assaulted, so she orders the local police to conduct a forensic investigation. Jane then tells Cory that he seems to know this area better than anyone else, and asks if there's any structure or house nearby where Natalie could have run from. Cory replies that the closest house is about 3.5 miles southeast. Ben adds that some troublemaking boys live there and suggests they question them. Jane asks if there's anything else nearby, and Cory mentions that about 5 miles away there are some drill rigs with trailers for the workers, but they're probably shut down because of the cold. Jane says she can't understand why a teenage girl would come out here alone. Ben explains that most teens around here ride their snowmobiles out to remote places like this to party. Jane replies, "That doesn't make sense. Natalie wouldn't come out here to party barefoot." She then asks Cory for his opinion. Cory says he can't make assumptions, but by reading the tracks, he can tell what probably happened. Jane doesn't seem to take his words seriously at first. Then Cory calls her over and shows her what the tracks reveal. Pointing to the prints in the snow, he says, "Look, her toes are turned outward, and the front of the prints is deeper than the back. That means she was running." A little farther ahead, Cory stops again and says, "She kept running until she fell here. See that blood stain? That's where her face hit the snow." Cory continues, "At night, the temperature here drops below 20 degrees. If someone runs in that kind of cold and fills their lungs with icy air, their lungs can freeze. They start to bleed from the inside, and they cough the blood out. Then he says quietly, "Wherever Natalie came from, she somehow made it this far. Her lungs burst here, and she sat down by that line of trees, curling up as she bled out and died." Hearing this, Jane asks softly, "How far do you think someone could run barefoot in this kind of cold?" Cory replies, "I can't say. How can you measure the will to live, especially in these conditions?" Cory, overcome with emotion, says he knew the girl. "She was a fighter," he says softly. "So however far you think she ran, I guarantee she ran farther." Then he turns to leave. Jane stops him and asks if he'll help her with the investigation. She then turns to Ben and asks if Cory can assist, but Ben replies that Cory doesn't work for him and that he has a lioness to hunt. Hearing that, Jane looks at Cory and asks, "So what exactly do you do?" Cory answers, "I'm a hunter." Jane smirks and says, "So are you a lion hunter?" Cory replies, "I hunt predators." Jane responds, "Then why don't you come hunt one for me?" Cory agrees. The next day, Jane meets Ben at the forensic lab. Ben tells her that the victim's family has identified the body. When Jane asks if they filed a missing person report, Ben says no. He explains that Natalie had been living with her boyfriend, and her parents said she was 18 and free to make her own choices. At the lab, Ben introduces Jane to Randy, the medical examiner. Randy explains his findings from the autopsy. The victim had deep head wounds, 2 fractured ribs, and severe frostbite up to both ankles. He also reports that Natalie's vaginal wall was torn at multiple depths. Jane asks if that means there were multiple assailants. Randy says he can't confirm that yet. It could have been one attacker who assaulted her multiple times. He adds that he collected samples and sent them to the FBI crime lab for DNA testing, and it'll take about 6 weeks before the results come back, which should reveal more about the assault. Ben asks Randy what he listed as the cause of death. Randy replies, "She died from a pulmonary hemorrhage. Sub-zero air entered her lungs, causing the tiny sacs to burst." Jane interrupts him, saying, "Sorry, but you're not listing it as a homicide?" Randy shakes his head and says he can't, because the direct cause of death was the hemorrhage from the cold air. Jane argues, "You have to take the circumstances into account. She was raped repeatedly and beaten." Randy calmly replies, "Sorry, but the circumstances are your field, not mine. I can only officially list the medical cause of death." Jane says that if the case isn't classified as a homicide, she won't be able to call on the FBI team for further investigation. Randy stands firm, saying he can't label it a homicide. He adds, "It'd be better if you could prove that the rape and assault actually happened. Then this case can move in the right direction." The next day, Ben and Jane start digging into the mystery of Natalie's death. First, Jane and Ben meet Natalie's father, Martin. Jane asks Martin what he knows about Natalie's boyfriend. Martin says he doesn't know anything. Natalie never told them about any boyfriend. Jane asks, "Your daughter was living with a man and you didn't know anything?" Martin says, "She was an adult, and like you people wrote into law, when a teenager turns 18, they're free of all those ties." Jane says she doesn't mean to offend him. She just wants to understand how a father could know nothing about his daughter. Martin answers, "Natalie never told us anything herself, but she was 18, and I chose to trust her, and I chose wrong." Cory arrives then. The moment Martin sees him, he breaks down, hugs Cory, and starts crying. Cory tells Martin that what's done can't be undone, and that he has to move forward. Martin says he hates his life now, and Cory replies that Natalie is gone, but his son is a reason to keep living. Martin says his son left long ago, his new family is drugs. He lives right down the damn road, but he's gone. Then Martin asks Cory if he's working with the FBI on Natalie's case. Cory says he's just doing what he was asked to do. Martin tells Cory, "If you find out who did this, promise me, there won't be any mercy that day." From there, Jane, Cory, and Ben head to Martin's son's house to question him. Ben tells Jane that Martin's son's name is Chip and that he lives here with 2 other guys. He says Chip is all right, but warns Jane to be careful around the other 2. Jane says, "Then why don't we call for backup?" Ben replies, "This isn't the land of backup, Jane. This is the land of you're on your own." Meanwhile, Cory starts examining the surrounding tracks, trying to figure out if any of these boys are connected to Natalie's death. Ben knocks on the door, and one of Chip's friends opens it. Ben asks if Chip is there. The guy says Chip isn't home. Ben, suspicious, asks again, but before he can say anything more, the guy suddenly sprays Ben and Jane with pepper spray. Both of them are blinded and in pain. Seeing this, Chip and his friend try to escape through the back door. but they run right into Cory, who knocks them both out. Jane comes over and begins questioning Chip about his sister, but Chip has no idea what happened to Natalie. Terrified, he starts asking Jane, what happened to Natalie? Is she okay? That's when Cory tells him he found Natalie raped and murdered. Chip is in shock and breaks down, crying uncontrollably. A little later, Jane walks over to Cory and tells him that if he wants to leave, he can. She's taking Chip in for questioning. She says maybe Chip can tell them something about Natalie's boyfriend. Cory says it won't do any good. These boys are drug addicts. They won't know anything. Then he tells Jane, "Come on, I want to show you something." Cory leads Jane to a set of snowmobile tracks heading up a ridge. He hands her his binoculars and tells her to take a look. Through the lens, Jane can clearly see that while the tracks go uphill, there are no return tracks coming down. Cory says, "My guess is someone took a sled up there, but never came back. The question is, why?" He then tells Jane they should follow the trail. Jane agrees with Cory and heads out with him to follow the sled tracks. As the tracks lead higher up the mountain, Cory keeps tracing them carefully. After going quite a distance, they reach the upper slopes, where the tracks suddenly disappear. So Cory and Jane continue on foot, inspecting the area. Then they spot a body, half buried in snow, with an eagle tearing at it. When they get closer, they realize it's the body of a man. That evening, Cory tells Ben that they should take a team back up to the spot where he found the man's body and examine it properly. There must be more tracks up there. Ben says he'll need approval from his supervisor first. Just then, Jane walks in and asks if Chip or his friends said anything. Ben replies that they're not exactly talkative. He adds that they actually want to stay in jail. It gives them free food and free cable TV to keep them entertained. Cory then asks if he can talk to Chip once. Jane tells him it won't make any difference, because anything Chip tells him won't be admissible in court. Cory says, "That's fine. I just want to know what I need to know." Chip is sitting in the police van when Cory goes to see him. Cory looks at him and says, "Look at what you've done to yourself." Chip replies, "This place is worthless. All we do here is lose things. You've lost too, haven't you?" Cory says, "I'm not going to stand here and tell you life's fair because it's not. Not for us either. But what can we do? This land is all we've got. I just want to help you so we can find who did this to Natalie." Chip snaps back, "You couldn't even help your own daughter. What are you going to do for me?" Hearing that, Cory slams Chip's head against the van and grabs him by the throat, saying, "That's not something you get to talk about." He lets go and then tells him, "Look at yourself. If you hated this place so much, you could have left. You could have built a career, lived a life you wanted. But what did you choose? Drugs?" Cory shakes his head. "There's no point talking sense to junkies like you anyway." As Cory turns to leave, Chip suddenly says he met Natalie's boyfriend once. "He was about your age," Chip tells him. "I tried to talk sense into Natalie, but she wouldn't listen." Chip goes on to say that the guy worked security at a drill site. Cory asks for his name, and Chip says, "Matt." Later, Cory meets Ben and asks, "You guys heading to the drill site tomorrow?" Ben says yes. Cory tells him that Natalie's boyfriend works there. Jane overhears and looks surprised, but says, "That information's unofficial, so don't tell me." That night, Cory goes to see his ex-wife. Seeing his face, Wilma asks, "Are you okay?" Cory replies, "Never been better." Wilma asks, "Did you, Ben, and your FBI friend find anything?" Cory says, "I'll find out." Wilma looks at him and says, "Cory, you're not going to find the answers you're looking for, no matter what you dig up." Cory says, "This isn't about Emily." Disappointed, Wilma tells him good night and closes the door. When Cory gets home, Jane is waiting for him. As soon as he walks in, she tells him that the dead man they found was named Matt Rayburn. He worked as a security contractor at a drill station. Cory invites her inside, saying it's too cold to stay out. He goes to get her something to drink. While waiting, Jane notices a photo of a young girl, along with pictures of Cory's family. Cory comes back, and when Jane asks about the girl, he tells her she was his daughter. Her name was Emily. She passed away 3 years ago. Jane gently says that if Cory wants, she'd like to know what happened to his daughter. Cory tells her that at that time, he was working out of town as an outfitter, and there had been a heavy snowstorm. He had managed to get one rare night off, so he went to a motel and called his wife to come stay with him for the night. Their 16-year-old daughter, Emily, was home taking care of their 5-year-old son, Casey. Cory says, "Maybe people found out we weren't home." Emily's school friends came over, then more friends, and eventually some people who weren't friends at all. What began as a small get-together turned into a full-blown party. And after that, Cory doesn't know what happened. The next day, he got a call from Natalie. She told him Emily was missing. Naturally, Natalie was worried. They had been best friends. Cory says they searched everywhere, did everything they could to find her, but she never came back. A few days later, a man herding sheep near Wind River found her, about 20 miles from their home. Nobody ever learned how she got there or what exactly happened to her. Even the autopsy didn't reveal much. Coyotes had done too much damage. Jane listens in silence, visibly moved by Cory's story. She feels the depth of his pain. Cory looks at her and says softly, "Don't feel sorry for me, Jane. Emily's in a better place now." Jane then asks Cory that, although it's unofficial, if he wants, he can share what he learned from Chip. Cory says, "Chip told me Natalie's boyfriend was Matt, and since you've already identified who Matt is, you can consider this official now." The next day, Cory, Jane, Ben, and a police team prepare to head to the drill site for questioning. Their main goal is to gather information about Matt, and since Natalie was his girlfriend, they want to find out whether Matt had any connection to the attack on her. Since Cory can't officially take part in the operation, he tells them he'll go to the site where Matt's body was found. He's convinced he'll find some clue there. Everyone sets off in their respective vehicles toward the drill site. A little before reaching, Cory splits off from the team. He packs his sniper rifle and gear, then rides his sled toward the spot where Matt's body was discovered to investigate further. Meanwhile, Jane, Ben, and the police team arrive at Matt's workplace, the drill site. There they meet a man named Curtis. Ben asks, "Does Matt Rayburn work here?" Curtis replies, "Yeah," and then asks, "Do you know where he is?" Ben says, "That's exactly what I was about to ask you." Curtis explains, Matt had an argument with his girlfriend a few days ago. She left, and then Matt went after her. We haven't seen him since. Just then, two more of Curtis's co-workers arrive. Seeing the bruises and cuts on their faces, Jane asks, "What happened to you two? Why do you look torn up?" Curtis quickly replies that they got hurt in a small accident while working. One of the officers then asks Curtis, "Does Matt bunk here on the property?" Curtis says, "Yeah, we all do." The officer continues, "Can we take a look at Matt's trailer?" Curtis nods, "Sure," and the whole group starts walking toward Matt's trailer. Meanwhile, Cory reaches the location and begins his inspection. He finds a set of tracks and starts following them. After tracking them for a while, he realizes they stretch quite far. Looking through his binoculars, Cory notices that the tracks lead directly to Matt's trailer. He also sees that Jane and the police team are already heading that way. Cory quickly rushes down the mountain, trying to contact Ben through his wireless radio. But there's no response. The signal is dead. Realizing something is wrong, Cory grabs his sniper rifle and sprints forward, trying to find a clear line of sight toward the drill site. Meanwhile, Curtis leads Jane and the rest of the officers to the trailer. When Jane asks, Curtis tells her that inside the trailer is their friend named Pete Mickens, who's probably asleep. Jane steps closer and knocks on the door. At that moment, the movie takes us into a flashback. Matt opens the trailer door, and standing there is Natalie. Seeing her, Matt's face lights up with joy. The two embrace, laughing and kissing, completely lost in the moment. They talk excitedly about their future together, whether they should move to New York or Chicago. Their love feels pure and full of hope. But suddenly, they hear the sound of trucks pulling up outside. Natalie's face tenses. Matt looks out the window and says, "That's my crew. They weren't supposed to come back tonight." Natalie, nervous, quickly pulls the room divider shut to hide herself. But as the men enter, one of them, Pete Mickens, catches a glimpse of her. Natalie hurriedly throws on her clothes and hides under the blanket with Matt. Seeing her, Pete smirks and barges in without knocking. Pete laughs and says mockingly, "Well, look at this. Is this the honeymoon suite or what?" Natalie and Matt ignore him, pretending to stay calm. Pete walks closer and sneers, "I'm just kind of wondering what you got under them big sheets there." Matt, clearly irritated, says to Curtis, "He's drunk. Get him out of here." But Pete doesn't stop. He leans in with a nasty grin and says, "Come on, tell me. You two having sex in there? You naked under that blanket?" Matt tells Curtis again to take Pete away. Pete gets stubborn and says, "I just want one little peek," and suddenly pulls the blanket off. As soon as he does that, Matt kicks Pete and knocks him to the floor. But even then, Pete doesn't stop and keeps taunting Natalie and Matt even more. Matt gets up from the bed, pushes Pete out of the room, and closes the room divider again. After that, while Matt is putting his clothes back on, Pete attacks him from behind. One of Matt's friends tries to calm them down and says, "Are you two fighting over a prostitute?" Hearing this, Natalie slaps that man hard. Then, taking advantage of the moment, Pete pulls down Natalie's pants. Seeing this, Matt starts beating Pete badly. Everyone there tries to stop Matt and pull him away from Pete. As soon as Natalie goes to help Matt, Curtis grabs her and punches her hard in the face. After that, everyone keeps holding Matt while Curtis beats him badly. Because of this, Matt faints. Then Pete starts raping Natalie. Suddenly, Matt regains consciousness, punches Curtis, and pulls Pete off Natalie. Natalie somehow puts her pants back on. Matt grabs Pete and tells Natalie to run away from there. All the men then gang up on Matt and start beating him again. Seeing this, Natalie feels helpless and runs away to save herself. Cut to the present. Even after Jane keeps knocking on the door repeatedly, Pete doesn't open it. Jane tells Curtis to tell Pete to open the door. Curtis calls out to Pete and says, "The FBI's at the door, so open it." In fact, that line from Curtis is a signal. Just then, Ben gets a call from Cory. Ben immediately tells Jane to move away from the door, but before she can, Pete fires from inside on Curtis's signal. The bullet hits Jane directly, and she's injured. Seeing this, a heavy gunfight breaks out between the police and those men. As soon as Pete steps outside to fire, Ben shoots him, hitting him in the arm. Curtis and his men overpower the police, killing every officer there. Ben is also seriously injured. Now Curtis goes to Jane and is about to shoot her when Cory, from a distance, fires his sniper rifle and shoots Curtis dead. One by one, Cory takes down the rest of Curtis's men as well. Inside the trailer, Pete and one of his men try to locate Cory's position, but Cory shoots that man too. Seeing this, Pete hides and manages to escape outside, running toward the snowfield, but Jane fires at him, hitting him and injuring him. Still, Pete somehow keeps running into the snowy open field. Jane is in great pain from her gunshot wound. Just then, Cory arrives, lifts her up, and takes her inside the trailer. He checks her wound and presses cloth on it to stop the bleeding. Jane quietly says she's okay, then tells Cory, "Pete's running, so go get him." On the other side, we see Pete desperately running through the snow, stumbling and falling as he tries to escape. He keeps running frantically until suddenly Cory appears in front of him and knocks him out. A while later, when Pete regains consciousness, he finds himself on top of a snowy mountain with Cory standing beside him. His hands are tied and he's barefoot. Seeing his condition, Pete starts screaming, frantically asking Cory about his boots. Cory, in a calm voice, says, "Can we talk now, or do you need to keep yelling?" Pete says, "Yeah, I made a lot of mistakes, but I'm sorry for all of them." Cory replies, "I'm not the law. I'm just a man sitting here with you, so you can tell me the truth, all of it, and walk away from here." Frustrated, Pete shouts, "You know what it's like out here in this frozen hell? There's nothing to do. Ain't no women, no fun, nothing. Just this fucking snow and this fucking silence." Cory calmly says, "There are people who've lived here for generations, in this silence, happily, peacefully, with pride and purpose." Then Cory says to Pete, "You need to be honest with me. You get drunk, you get lonely, and then what did you do?" Pete stays silent. Cory quietly says, "If you did it, just be a man and say it. You raped her." Pete finally confesses, "Yeah, I raped Natalie." Cory calmly asks, "What did you do to Matt?" Pete replies, "We beat him dead." Cory quietly says, "Okay." Pete, still barefoot and tied up, looks at himself and starts screaming, asking for his boots. Then Cory unties his hands. Just as he promised, Cory tells him, "Go, you're free to go." Pete asks, "Where am I supposed to go like this? How am I supposed to survive?" Cory says, "I'm giving you the same chance Natalie had." Pete pleads with him not to do it, but Cory replies, "I'm not doing anything. I'm just giving you your freedom." Cory tells him, "There's a highway 6 miles from here. If you can make it, you'll find help and you can go wherever you want. Natalie couldn't survive those 6 miles barefoot in this cold. Maybe you can." Pete says he won't do it. Cory then says, "I want you to run," and fires a shot into the air. Terrified, Pete starts running. He manages to go some distance, but the freezing winds begin to crush his lungs. And just like Natalie, Pete collapses in the snow and dies. At last, Natalie's killer meets his end. The next day, Cory visits Jane in the hospital. She's recovering and looks better. Jane asks Cory about Pete, and Cory quietly says that he left Pete to his fate. So that was the end of the movie. If you liked the explanation, give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe for more. Thanks for watching.